In suburban Chicago, a marketing coordinator was about to discover the most devastating betrayal of her life. What started as a routine Christmas morning visit took a shocking turn when she came face to face with her own carefully chosen gifts, bearing someone else's name. Emma Rodriguez wasn't your typical people-pleaser. For 28 years, she had spent her life perfecting the art of anticipation, known for remembering every casual comment and turning it into the perfect gift. When she encountered her vintage art book and handcrafted tools arranged under Claire's tree with Claire's name on the tags, she had no idea she was walking into a moment that would shatter everything she believed about love and family. Emma's quiet realization that would lead to the complete transformation of who she thought she was. What began as a sister's Christmas morning visit would become a journey of self-discovery. The Rodriguez family would never be the same after. Emma learned the difference between being needed and being valued. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed. Because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. Emma Rodriguez traced her finger along the spine of the vintage art book, feeling the worn leather binding beneath her touch. The afternoon light streaming through the bookstore window caught the gold lettering just right, making it shimmer like something precious. She could already picture Isabella's face when she opened it. The way her youngest sister's eyes would widen, then soften with that particular joy reserved for unexpected treasures. "It's a beautiful piece," the elderly bookstore owner said, approaching with the careful steps of someone who understood the weight of meaningful objects. Published in 1962. Original lithographs from the Parisian avant-garde movement. Emma nodded, though her attention had already moved beyond the book's monetary value to its deeper significance. Isabella had mentioned the movement in passing, during their last coffee date, her voice carrying that dreamy quality it took on when she discussed art that moved her. Most people would have forgotten such a casual comment. Emma filed it away like a precious photograph. "I'll take it," she said, already reaching for her wallet. The transaction completed, Emma walked back to her car with the wrapped package, tucked carefully under her arm. December in suburban Chicago carried that particular bite that made everyone walk a little faster, but Emma found herself moving deliberately, savoring the weight of the gift and the anticipation it represented. Her apartment that evening had transformed into something resembling Santa's workshop, if Santa worked from a cramped one-bedroom with questionable heating. Gift boxes lined her coffee table in neat rows, each one representing weeks of careful observation and consideration. The vintage art book for Isabella sat beside a leather-bound journal she'd found at an estate sale, perfect for her sister's habit of sketching ideas on napkins and scraps of paper. For her father Miguel, she'd selected a professional-grade toolkit from the hardware store where he'd worked for 15 years before opening his own contracting business. The tools were expensive, more than she could easily afford on her marketing coordinator salary. But she'd watched him admire similar sets during their trips to supply stores. He would run his calloused fingers over the precision instruments with the reverence other men reserved for sports cars. "Mija," he would say whenever she protested his tendency to use worn-out equipment. "Good tools are for people who don't know how to make do." But Emma had seen the way his eyes lingered on displays of quality craftsmanship, the same way Isabella studied paintings in galleries she couldn't afford to buy from. Her mother, Sophia, would receive a spa package at the wellness center downtown. Not the expensive all-day treatments that would make her feel guilty for indulging, but a simple massage package that acknowledged the weight she carried in her shoulders. From years of teaching elementary school and then raising 3 daughters who each required different kinds of attention, Emma remembered being 12 and watching her mother rub her temples after particularly difficult parent-teacher conferences, the way Sophia would smile and insist she was just tired when Emma asked if she was okay. Even then, Emma understood that her mother's tiredness went deeper than physical exhaustion, though she couldn't have articulated the emotional labor that comes with being the family's designated peacekeeper. The memory led her to Claire's gift, a delicate silver necklace with her birthstone that Emma had found at a boutique in Lincoln Park. Choosing something for her older sister always required careful navigation. Too expensive, and Claire would make comments about Emma showing off her marketing job. Too simple, and she'd receive that particular smile that said more than words about perceived inadequacies. Emma held the necklace up to the light, watching the stone catch the reflection from her Christmas tree. Claire had always been beautiful, successful in ways that seemed effortless, married to David, a tech executive whose family owned half of Lake Forest, living in a house that appeared in local magazines. But Emma sometimes caught glimpses of something fragile beneath her sister's polished surface, moments when Claire's laugh seemed just a little too bright, her smile a little too practiced. The necklace felt like a peace offering, though Emma couldn't quite name what conflict it was meant to resolve. She moved through her apartment with practiced efficiency, wrapping each gift with the careful attention to detail that characterized everything she did. Personalized notes, written in her neat marketing professional handwriting, accompanied each package. For Isabella, to fuel your creativity and remind you that art changes the world, one beautiful thing at a time. For Miguel, because the right tools and skilled hands can build anything. For Sophia, a reminder to take care of yourself the way you take care of everyone else. Claire's note took longer to write. Emma found herself starting and stopping, searching for words that felt genuine without being too vulnerable. Finally, she settled on, thinking of you and grateful for the memories we've shared. As she arranged the gifts under her small Christmas tree, Emma felt the familiar mixture of excitement and anxiety that preceded family gatherings. The anticipation of giving, of seeing faces light up with recognition and pleasure, always mingled with the underlying tension that seemed to follow their family like an uninvited guest. Her phone rang as she was adjusting the final package, making sure each gift was positioned to catch the tree lights just right. Misha! Her mother's voice carried the warmth that had comforted Emma through childhood nightmares and teenage heartbreaks. I just wanted to confirm tomorrow's plans. Claire said to arrive around 11 for presents, then we'll have dinner at 2. I'll be there, Emma replied, settling into her couch and pulling a throw blanket around her legs. Do you need me to bring anything? Just yourself, sweetheart. And maybe that apple pie you made last Thanksgiving? David still talks about it. Emma smiled at the memory. David had indeed praised her pie effusively, while Claire sat nearby making subtle comments about store-bought crusts being perfectly acceptable, and wondering aloud why anyone would stress themselves with homemade desserts when so many good bakeries existed. I already have one in the oven, Emma said, because of course she did. Planning ahead, anticipating needs, providing small comforts, these had become her specialties, the ways she ensured her place in a family that sometimes felt like a puzzle, where she couldn't quite figure out which piece she was supposed to be. After ending the call, Emma sat in the glow of her Christmas tree, surrounded by carefully chosen gifts and the satisfaction of preparation completed. Tomorrow, she would watch her family open presents that represented hours of thought, observation, and care. She would see Isabella's eyes light up at the art book, watch her father's hands explore the new tools, observe her mother's pleased surprise at being thought of and cared for. These moments of connection, of being seen and appreciated for the attention she paid to others' needs and dreams, made all the careful planning worthwhile. In a family where harmony often felt fragile, Emma had learned that the right gift at the right moment could bridge any gap, smooth any tension, remind everyone why they gathered together despite their differences. Outside her apartment window, snow began to fall in lazy spirals, adding to the magic of Christmas Eve. Emma pulled her blanket tighter and allowed herself to imagine tomorrow's perfect moments, the surprise and gratitude, the warm embraces, the feeling of having contributed something meaningful to her family's happiness. She had no way of knowing that in less than 12 hours, those carefully chosen gifts would become the instruments of her awakening to truths she had spent 28 years avoiding. Christmas morning arrived with the kind of pristine snowfall that made suburban Chicago look like a greeting card. Emma woke before her alarm, her body responding to years of conditioning that had taught her to be ready, to be prepared, to arrive early with everything perfectly arranged. She loaded her car with military precision. Gifts in order of presentation, the apple pie secured in a specially purchased carrier, a backup hostess gift of expensive wine just in case Claire had forgotten to mention other guests. The drive to her sister's Lake Forest home took her through neighborhoods. At 24, she remained the family member least changed by adult complications, still quick to hug, still unguarded in her affections. I was helping with the coffee cake, but I think I've been banished for being too experimental with the cinnamon. Claire's laugh carried from the kitchen, light and practiced. She wanted to add cardamom, to a family recipe that's been perfect for generations. Emma caught the edge in her sister's voice, the way Claire's perfectionism manifested in small controls and gentle corrections. She'd learned to hear these nuances over the years, the subtle ways her family communicated dissatisfaction without direct confrontation. The gift exchange began after coffee, with Claire orchestrating the process like a conductor managing a complex symphony. She had arranged everyone in a careful circle, with presents distributed according to some system Emma couldn't quite decipher, but suspected had everything to do with creating the most photogenic moments for the pictures Claire would inevitably post on social media. Emma watched as her carefully chosen gifts were opened, each recipient responding exactly as she had anticipated. Isabella gasped over the vintage art book, immediately losing herself in the lithographs while murmuring about techniques and historical context. Miguel examined his new tools with the reverent attention of a craftsman, testing the weight and balance of each piece. Sophia clutched the spa package to her chest, already protesting that Emma shouldn't have spent so much while her eyes filled with tears that spoke to how rarely anyone acknowledged her need for care. "Your turn," Claire announced, presenting Emma with a small, elegantly wrapped package that bore the distinctive ribbon of an expensive department store. Emma opened it to reveal a silk scarf in muted tones. Beautiful, expensive, and completely generic. The kind of gift someone purchased when they knew they needed to reciprocate, but hadn't invested the time to consider what the recipient might actually want or need. "It's lovely," Emma said, because it was expected, because it was easier than acknowledging the hollow feeling settling in her chest. "I thought it would be perfect for your work presentations," Claire said with satisfaction. Professional, but with just enough color to make a statement. The conversation moved on to other topics. David's latest promotion, Isabella's upcoming gallery showing, Miguel's expansion plans for his business. Emma participated with her usual attentiveness, asking follow-up questions, remembering details from previous conversations, creating space for others to shine. But something had shifted. The silk scarf lay in her lap like evidence of something she wasn't ready to name. It was during dinner preparations that the revelation began to crystallize. Emma found herself automatically taking charge of coordination, checking the turkey's temperature, managing side dishes, ensuring everyone had drinks, while the rest of the family relaxed in the living room, their laughter drifting into the kitchen like a soundtrack to her solitary labor. She was arranging serving utensils when Claire appeared in the doorway, wine glass in hand, observing Emma's efficient movements with something that might have been amusement. "You know you don't have to do all that," Claire said, though her tone suggested the opposite. "We could have ordered from that place David likes." Emma paused, a serving spoon halfway to the gravy boat. "I don't mind. I like helping." "You always like helping," Claire replied, taking a sip of wine. "It's kind of your thing, isn't it? Taking care of everyone else's needs." There was something in her sister's voice, not quite mockery, but a kind of clinical observation that made Emma feel suddenly exposed, as if Claire was describing a behavior rather than acknowledging a kindness. "What do you mean?" Claire shrugged, moving to lean against the granite counter. "Just that you're always so attentive. The perfect gifts, the homemade pie, remembering what everyone said they wanted 3 months ago. It's impressive, really. Very thorough." The word thorough hung in the air like an accusation Emma couldn't quite understand. She returned to her serving preparations, trying to shake off the discomfort settling between her shoulder blades. "I just pay attention," she said finally. "Oh, you definitely do that." Claire's smile was sharp around the edges. "The question is whether anyone actually asked you to." The words hit Emma like cold water, forcing her to consider a possibility she had never allowed herself to examine. What if her careful attention to others' needs wasn't the gift she had always assumed it to be? What if her family had learned to expect her service rather than appreciate it? She thought about the silk scarf, so beautiful and so impersonal, about how her gifts required weeks of thought while hers appeared to have been purchased during a lunch break, about how naturally she had gravitated toward the kitchen while everyone else relaxed, how no one had questioned her assumption of responsibility. The sound of laughter from the living room took on a different quality, less like inclusion, more like distance. Emma realized she couldn't remember the last time someone had asked what she needed, what she wanted, what might make her Christmas morning perfect. She had spent so many years perfecting the art of giving that she had forgotten to notice she was never really receiving anything in return beyond the temporary satisfaction of being useful. The recognition settled in her chest like a weight she couldn't name, heavy and uncomfortable and impossible to ignore. Emma stood at the kitchen window, mechanically stirring gravy that was already perfectly smooth, watching snow continue to fall in the gathering dusk. Behind her, the sounds of family dinner created a familiar symphony. Her father's deep laugh at one of David's stories, Isabella animatedly describing a technique she'd discovered in the art book, her mother's gentle corrections to someone's grammar, the same comfortable chaos that had soundtracked every family gathering for as long as she could remember. But for the first time, Emma heard herself missing from the melody. She wasn't contributing to the conversation because she was in the kitchen, ensuring the meal progressed seamlessly. She wasn't laughing at David's jokes because she was monitoring serving dishes, anticipating when platters would need refilling. She wasn't sharing her own stories because somewhere along the way, she had learned that her role was to facilitate others' stories, not to tell her own. The realization felt like discovering she had been speaking a foreign language her entire life, one where love was expressed through service and worth was measured by usefulness. "Emma, sweetheart, come sit down," her mother called from the dining room. "Everything looks perfect. You've done enough." The phrase stopped Emma mid-stir. You've done enough. When was the last time someone had said that to her? When was the last time anyone had noticed she was doing anything at all, rather than simply expecting the seamless execution of invisible labor? She joined the family at Claire's impeccably set dining table, sliding into the one remaining chair, the one closest to the kitchen, she noticed, positioned for easy access to forgotten items and second servings. Even the seating arrangement reflected her designated role. The conversation flowed around her as she picked at her plate, her appetite diminished by the growing awareness of patterns she had never questioned. Miguel praised the turkey's perfect seasoning, while Claire mentioned offhandedly that she had barely done anything, since Emma had taken care of everything. David complimented the homemade cranberry sauce, then launched into a story about his latest business triumph without asking Emma about her own work. "How are things at the marketing firm?" Sophia asked eventually, the question feeling like an afterthought, a polite inquiry rather than genuine interest. "Good," Emma replied automatically. "We landed the Henderson account last month. It was a challenging pitch, but—" "Oh, that reminds me," Claire interrupted, turning to David. "Did you see that Henderson's daughter got into Northwestern? Sarah Henderson was practically glowing at the country club last week." The conversation pivoted seamlessly away from Emma's accomplishment, as if her professional success was merely a launching point for more interesting topics. She watched it happen with a detachment that felt like viewing her life from a great distance, seeing clearly for the first time how consistently her contributions were absorbed and redirected. Isabella, perhaps sensing something, tried to draw her back in. "Emma, what was that project you mentioned last time? The one with the environmental nonprofit?" Emma felt a flutter of surprise. Someone had been listening. Someone remembered. "The Clean Water Initiative campaign. We're launching it in February, and it's actually—" "Speaking of February," Miguel interjected, "that's when I'm hoping to break ground on the Morrison project. Biggest residential job I've ever taken on." And once again, Emma's narrative was swept aside in favor of more pressing family news. She smiled and asked interested questions about the Morrison project, falling back into her familiar role as facilitator and cheerleader, but now she was conscious of the choice. She could see herself making it, could feel the small death of her own story in service of maintaining family harmony. After dinner, as they moved to the living room for coffee and Claire's elaborate dessert presentation, Emma found herself standing slightly apart from the group, observing rather than participating. Her family arranged themselves in comfortable clusters, her parents on the sofa, David and Claire coordinating the coffee service with practiced efficiency, Isabella cross-legged on the floor, still absorbed in her art book. They looked complete, without her active participation. Not like they were excluding her, but like they had never really needed her engagement, only her service. The thought should have been devastating, but instead, Emma felt an unexpected lightness, as if she had been holding her breath for years, and was finally exhaling. If her family could function perfectly well without her constant attention to their needs, what might she do with all that redirected energy? "Emma?" Her mother's voice cut through her reverie. "You seem quiet tonight. Everything okay?" The question carried genuine concern, and Emma felt a familiar impulse to reassure, to deflect, to ensure that her own discomfort didn't disturb the evening's carefully maintained peace. But something had shifted in the space between the kitchen and the living room, some internal mechanism that had regulated her responses for 28 years. "I'm just thinking," she said instead of offering automatic reassurance. "About what?" Isabella looked up from her book, focusing on Emma with the kind of direct attention that had become rare in their family interactions. Emma considered her answer carefully. She could deflect with something safe. Work stress, holiday fatigue, the usual explanations that would satisfy without requiring deeper engagement. Or she could try something different. "About gifts," she said finally. "About what makes a gift meaningful," Claire laughed, the sound carrying a familiar edge. "You're the expert on that. All our presents were so perfectly chosen. You must have spent months planning." "I did," Emma agreed, but this time she didn't smile at the compliment. "I spent a lot of time thinking about what each of you would want, what would make you happy." "And we all loved them," Sophia said warmly. "You have such a gift for knowing exactly what people need." Emma looked at her mother, seeing the genuine affection, there, the real appreciation. But she also saw the assumption that Emma's role was to know what others needed, to provide it, to find satisfaction in their happiness rather than pursuing her own. "What if," Emma said slowly, testing the words as she spoke them, "what if the most meaningful gift isn't something you give to someone else, but something you give to yourself?" The room fell quiet, her family exchanging glances that she could interpret too easily. Confusion, mild concern, the subtle communication that someone was deviating from script. "What do you mean, mija?" Miguel asked gently. Emma looked around. The room at these people she loved really looked at them, seeing both their genuine care and their comfortable assumptions about her role in their lives. She thought about the silk scarf, beautiful and impersonal, about Claire's clinical observation of her caretaking, about standing alone in the kitchen while laughter drifted from the other room. "I mean," she said, surprised by the steadiness of her own voice, "maybe it's time I learned what I actually want, instead of spending all my energy figuring out what everyone else needs." The silence that followed felt different from the comfortable quiet of earlier in the evening. This was the silence of a system recognizing disruption, of people suddenly aware that someone had changed the rules without warning. Emma felt simultaneously terrified and exhilarated, like she had just stepped off a cliff and discovered she might actually know how to fly. The silence stretched like a held breath, each family member processing Emma's words through their own lens of understanding. Claire was the first to speak, her voice carrying that particular tone she used when trying to redirect conversations back to safer territory. "Well, that's very philosophical," she said with a light laugh. "But I think you're being too hard on yourself. You're wonderful at gift-giving because you care about people. That's not something to question. It's something to celebrate." Emma watched her sister's face as she spoke, seeing the genuine bewilderment there. Claire wasn't being dismissive out of malice. She simply couldn't fathom why anyone would want to examine something that worked so well for everyone involved. Emma's gift-giving made Claire's life easier, made the family gatherings run smoothly, ensured that everyone felt cared for without Claire having to invest the same level of emotional labor. "But what about what Emma wants?" Isabella asked, closing her art book and giving her older sister her full attention. "When was the last time any of us asked what would make you happy?" The question hung in the air like an accusation, though Emma could see that Isabella meant it as genuine curiosity rather than criticism. At 24, Isabella was still young enough to believe that problems could be solved by simply asking better questions. "I am happy," Emma said automatically, then stopped herself. "I mean, I thought I was happy. I thought making everyone else happy was the same thing." David shifted uncomfortably in his chair, clearly wishing the conversation would return to safer topics like business ventures and vacation plans. "Emma, you've always been the thoughtful one. It's one of your best qualities. I don't think you should overthink it." "Maybe I should think about it more," Emma replied, surprised by her own contradiction. She had never directly disagreed with David before, had always accepted his pronouncements about her character as definitive assessments. "Maybe I've been underthinking it for years." Sophia leaned forward, her maternal instincts activated by the tension she could feel building in the room. Misha. Where is this coming from? You seem upset. Did something happen? Emma looked at her mother's concerned face and felt the familiar pull to reassure, to smooth over the discomfort she had created. But she also felt something else. A growing clarity about the patterns that had shaped her entire adult life. Nothing happened, Mama. That's the problem. Nothing ever happens to me because I'm too busy making sure things happen for everyone else. She paused, gathering courage. When was the last time I told you about something I wanted? Something I was excited about? Something that was just for me? The question seemed to catch Sophia off guard. Emma watched her mother's face as she searched through memories, trying to identify a recent conversation where Emma had been the focus rather than the facilitator. You told us about that promotion possibility last spring, Miguel offered helpfully. That was 18 months ago, Emma said gently. And it wasn't about what I wanted. It was about what I thought I should want. I never even applied for it, because I was worried about having less time for family obligations. The admission surprised even Emma. She hadn't consciously realized that she had sabotaged her own career advancement out of fear that success might interfere with her ability to care for others. Claire's expression had shifted from bewilderment to something that looked almost like annoyance. Emma, I think you're creating a problem where none exists. You're successful, you have a good job, you have family who loves you. What more do you want? The question was meant to be rhetorical, but Emma found herself actually considering it. What did she want? The realization that she couldn't immediately answer was more revealing than any of her previous observations. I don't know, she said honestly. I think that's exactly the point. I've spent so long figuring out what everyone else wants that I never learned to identify my own desires. Isabella moved from the floor to sit beside Emma on the sofa, her young face serious with understanding, like how I used to only paint what I thought people wanted to see, instead of what I needed to express. Emma felt a rush of gratitude for her youngest sister's intuitive grasp of the situation. Yes, exactly like that. But art is different, Claire protested. Art is supposed to be about self-expression. Family is about caring for each other. Is it? Emma asked, the question emerging before she could censor it. Or is family supposed to be about everyone caring for each other? Because right now it feels more like everyone expects me to do the caring while they do the receiving. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. The words were harsher than Emma had intended, but she couldn't take them back. They sat in the room like uninvited guests, demanding acknowledgement. Miguel cleared his throat uncomfortably. Emma, that's not fair. We all contribute in different ways. How do I contribute? Emma asked, genuinely curious. I mean, how do I contribute beyond organizing and gift-giving and making sure everyone else's needs are met? The question created another uncomfortable silence. Emma could see her family members exchanging glances, trying to formulate answers that would reassure her without acknowledging the accuracy of her observation. You're the heart of this family, Sophia said finally, her voice thick with emotion. You're the one who remembers birthdays and keeps us all connected and makes sure we don't lose touch with each other. Emma felt the familiar warmth that came with her mother's approval, but this time it was accompanied by a deeper sadness. Being the heart of the family sounded beautiful until you realized it meant everyone else got to be the other organs, the brain making decisions, the hands taking action, the mouth speaking desires, while you were expected to simply pump life into everyone else's endeavors. What if I don't want to be the heart anymore? Emma asked quietly. What if I want to be a whole person instead of just the part that keeps everyone else functioning? David stood abruptly, clearly uncomfortable with the conversation's direction. I think I'll start cleaning up the dessert plates, he announced, though the dessert plates were still being used. I'll help, Emma said automatically, rising from her seat. No. The word came out more forcefully than she had intended. Everyone stared at her in surprise, including Emma herself. No, I think I'll stay here for once. Someone else can handle the plates. David looked genuinely confused, as if Emma had spoken in a foreign language. The idea that she might not automatically volunteer for cleanup duty seemed to short-circuit his understanding of how family gatherings functioned. Claire moved to help David instead, but Emma could feel her sister's eyes on her, measuring this new version of Emma against the familiar template she had always provided. "So what happens now?" Isabella asked, her question cutting through the awkward reorganization happening around them. "If you don't want to be the family heart anymore, what do you want to be?" Emma looked around the room at her family, some trying to maintain normalcy through the ritual of cleanup, others watching her with varying degrees of concern and confusion. For the first time in her adult life, she didn't have an immediate answer designed to make everyone else more comfortable. "I don't know yet," she said, and discovered that uncertainty felt less terrifying than she had expected. "But I think figuring that out might be the most important gift I could give myself." Outside, the snow continued to fall, blanketing the perfectly manicured neighborhood in pristine white. Emma watched it through Claire's tall windows and realized that sometimes the most beautiful transformations began with covering up what had always been there, creating space for something entirely new to emerge. Emma left Claire's house 3 hours earlier than planned, declining offers to stay for leftover turkey sandwiches and the traditional Christmas movie marathon. The weight of everyone's concern followed her to the car. Her mother's worried questions about whether she was feeling well, Miguel's awkward offer to talk if something was bothering her, Claire's brittle insistence that she was overthinking things. Only Isabella had seemed to understand her need to leave. Her youngest sister had walked her to the door, carrying the vintage art book like a talisman. "Thank you," Isabella had said simply. "Not just for the book, but for showing me that it's okay to want things for yourself." Now, driving through the quiet streets of her own neighborhood, Emma felt the strange liberation that comes with disappointing people who love you. It wasn't comfortable, but it was honest in a way she hadn't experienced in years. Her apartment felt different when she returned, smaller perhaps, but also more authentically hers. She looked at the careful arrangements she had created for Christmas morning, the perfectly wrapped presents that now seemed like artifacts from someone else's life. On her kitchen counter, a bottle of wine sat unopened, a gift to herself that she had forgotten about in the rush to prepare gifts for everyone else. Emma opened the wine and poured herself a generous glass, then settled into her reading chair with a notebook she hadn't touched in months. She had purchased it with vague intentions of journaling, but like so many things meant for herself, it had been pushed aside in favor of more urgent obligations to others. Now she opened it to the first blank page and stared at the empty lines, realizing she had no idea what to write. How did you document a life you were just beginning to recognize as your own? She started with a simple list. Things I know about myself. The page remained blank for several minutes before she wrote her first entry. I am good at anticipating what other people need. Then, after a pause, I don't know what I need. The admission on paper felt both pathetic and revolutionary. 28 years old, and she was starting from scratch with the most basic question of selfhood. Her phone buzzed with a text from Sophia. Just wanted to make sure you got home safely. Love you, Mija. Emma stared at the message, recognizing the familiar pattern. Her mother's concern was genuine, but it was also a gentle probe, an invitation for Emma to reassure everyone that she was fine, that her earlier behavior had been an aberration, that normal service would resume shortly. Instead of responding, immediately, Emma set the phone aside and returned to her notebook. Things I want to try, she wrote at the top of a new page. This list came more easily. Learn to paint, not just give Isabella art supplies. Take a cooking class for myself, not to make better dinners for others. Travel somewhere I want to go, not just family-approved destinations. Say no to things without explaining why. Have a conversation about my work, without it being redirected to someone else's achievements. The last item surprised her with its specificity. She thought about the dinner conversation, how her mention of the Henderson account had been immediately overshadowed by gossip about the Henderson daughter. How many times had that happened? How many small victories and struggles had she kept to herself because she had learned that her family's attention was a finite resource, better spent on more dramatic narratives? Emma pulled out her laptop and opened her work files, something she had never done on a holiday evening. But now she found herself genuinely curious about her own professional accomplishments, viewing them through the lens of someone who might actually matter. The Henderson account hadn't just been a challenging pitch. It had been her idea, her strategy, her presentation that won over a client who had initially dismissed their firm as too small for their needs. She had spent weeks researching their competitors, identifying gaps in their current marketing approach, crafting a proposal that positioned their environmental focus as a competitive advantage rather than a niche limitation. It was good work. Creative, strategic, successful. The kind of work that deserved celebration rather than polite acknowledgement before conversation moved on to more interesting topics. Emma opened a new document and began writing. Not a journal entry, but a proposal. She had been thinking for months about a specialized division within their firm, one focused exclusively on sustainable businesses and environmental nonprofits. It was a market that aligned with her values and played to her strengths, but she had always dismissed it as too risky, too self-serving, too likely to interfere with her availability for family obligations. But what if those weren't legitimate concerns? What if they were just excuses that kept her playing small? She wrote for 2 hours, losing herself in the flow of ideas and possibilities. When she finally stopped, she had the outline of a business plan that excited her more than anything had in years. It was ambitious, risky, and entirely focused on what she wanted to create, rather than what others expected her to provide. Her phone showed 3 more texts, one from Sophia asking if she needed anything, one from Claire suggesting they talk soon about whatever was bothering her, and one from Isabella sharing a photo of herself painting, with the caption, "Starting something new." Emma responded to Isabella first. "Proud of you for following your inspiration." To her mother, "I'm fine, Mama. Just thinking about some changes I want to make." To Claire, she wrote and deleted several responses before settling on, "I'm not bothered. I'm awake." She knew Claire wouldn't understand the distinction, but Emma was beginning to realize that her family's understanding wasn't required for her own clarity. On impulse, she called her friend Jessica, someone she had grown distant from over the years as family obligations consumed more of her time and emotional energy. "Emma, is everything okay? It's Christmas night." "I'm good," Emma said, and was surprised to realize she meant it. "Actually, I'm better than good. I'm wondering if you want to get coffee this week. I have some ideas I'd like to run by someone, and I realized I've missed talking to you." Jessica's delight was audible through the phone. "I would love that. I've missed you too. I was starting to think you'd been absorbed into some kind of family vortex." Emma laughed, the sound feeling rusty but genuine. "Something like that. But I think I'm finding my way back out." After they hung up, Emma returned to her notebook. On a fresh page, she wrote, "Things I'm learning about myself. I have ideas worth sharing. I can disappoint people and still love them. I don't have to earn my place in relationships through service. I want to build something that matters to me. I've been afraid of my own ambitions." The last item felt like the most honest thing she had written all evening. She had been afraid, not of failure, but of success that might require her to prioritize her own needs over others' expectations. Outside her window, the snow had stopped falling, leaving the world transformed and pristine. Emma looked at her reflection in the dark glass and saw someone she was just beginning to recognize. Not the family heart, or the perfect gift giver, or the woman who made everyone else's life easier, but simply Emma Rodriguez, with desires and ambitions and a future that belonged entirely to her. It was, she realized, the most perfect gift she had ever received. 3 weeks into January, Emma sat across from Jessica at their favorite coffee shop, watching her friend's eyes widen as she explained her business proposal. The cafe buzzed with the energy of New Year resolutions and fresh starts, but Emma felt like she was having a different kind of conversation than the typical January planning session. "This is incredible," Jessica said, flipping through the printed pages Emma had brought. "I had no idea you were thinking about something this ambitious. When did you put all this together?" "Christmas night, mostly," Emma admitted. "And every evening since then. I've been staying up until midnight working on it, and I haven't felt this energized about anything in years." Jessica studied her friend's face with the attention of someone who had known her for a decade. "You look different. Not just excited. More solid somehow. Like you're taking up more space." The observation made Emma smile. She had been noticing the same thing in mirrors. The way she stood a little straighter, made eye contact a little longer, spoke with less apology in her voice. I think I'm learning what it feels like to want something for myself. And how does it feel? Terrifying, Emma said without hesitation. And amazing. And like I should have started years ago. They spent the next hour dissecting Emma's proposal, a specialized marketing consultancy focused on environmental and sustainability businesses. Jessica, who worked in venture capital, asked sharp questions about market analysis, competitive positioning, and funding strategies. For the first time in years, Emma felt her professional expertise being taken seriously, treated as the foundation for something significant, rather than just a nice skill set that helped her support other people's dreams. You'll need to start building your network in the sustainability space, Jessica advised. And you should consider applying for that SBA Small Business Development Program. They have excellent mentorship components. Emma nodded, taking notes with the intensity of someone who finally had a clear target for her ambitions. I've already started reaching out to some contacts from the Henderson campaign. 3 of them have expressed interest in preliminary consulting work. Smart. Building while you're still employed is the safest approach. Jessica paused, studying Emma's face again. Can I ask what changed? I mean, you've always been brilliant at marketing, but you never seemed interested in taking these kinds of risks. Emma considered the question, thinking back to Christmas, night, and the weeks that had followed. I think I realized I was spending all my energy managing other people's emotions and needs, and I didn't have anything left for my own growth. It was like I was running a household management service for my family without realizing that's what I was doing. And now? Now I'm learning to say no. Emma's smile held a hint of mischief. You should have seen my mother's face when I told her I couldn't host the New Year's Eve party this year because I was working on something important. Jessica laughed. How did that go over? About as well as you'd expect. Lots of concern about me overworking myself and reminders that family should come first. But Isabella ended up hosting instead, and it was actually better than my parties usually are. More relaxed, less orchestrated. I think everyone had more fun when they weren't depending on me to manage every detail. The conversation was interrupted by Emma's phone buzzing with a text from Claire. Haven't heard from you in a while. Everything okay? Emma showed Jessica the message, rolling her eyes. This is what I mean. 3 weeks without constant check-ins, and suddenly there's concern about my well-being. What will you say? Emma typed quickly. Everything's great. Working on an exciting project. We'll call you this weekend. That's it? Jessica asked, reading over her shoulder. That's it. No explanations, no reassurances, no immediate offer to come over and fix whatever might be wrong in her life. Emma put the phone away. It's amazing how much time I have for my own thoughts when I'm not constantly managing everyone else's emotional temperature. They parted ways with plans to meet weekly to discuss Emma's business development progress. Walking back to her apartment, Emma felt the satisfaction that comes from being seen and understood by someone who wasn't expecting her to be anything other than herself. Her phone rang as she unlocked her front door. Miguel's name appeared on the screen, and Emma felt the familiar tightness in her chest that preceded family conversations. She almost let it go to voicemail, then decided this might be a good opportunity to practice her new boundaries. Hi, Papa. Mija, how are you? Your mother is worried because you haven't been by the house in a few weeks. Emma settled into her reading chair, the same one where she had begun her notebook 3 weeks earlier. I'm good, Papa. Really good, actually. I've been working on a business plan. Business plan? Miguel's voice carried surprise and something that might have been concern. What kind of business? Is everything okay with your job? My job is fine, but I'm thinking about starting my own consulting firm, specializing in marketing for environmental businesses. Emma was surprised by how confident she sounded, how easily the words came. There was a pause. That sounds risky, Mija. You have a good job, steady income. Why would you want to give that up? Emma had expected this reaction, but it still stung slightly. I'm not giving anything up yet, Papa. I'm exploring possibilities. And even if I do eventually leave my job, it would be to build something that matters to me, not because I'm running away from anything. But what if it doesn't work? What if you can't find enough clients? The questions felt familiar, not just from her father, but from her own internal critic that had kept her playing small for years. But now, instead of absorbing the doubt, Emma found herself responding with clarity. Then I'll figure out what to do next. But Papa, what if it does work? What if I build something successful that helps businesses make the world better while supporting myself financially? Another pause. You sound different, Emma. More, I don't know, stubborn? Emma laughed. Maybe. Or maybe just more clear about what I want. Your mother wants to know if you're coming for dinner Sunday. She's making that chicken dish you like. The invitation felt loaded with expectation, as family invitations always did. Emma could hear the subtext. Come back to the fold. Reassure everyone that you're still the same Emma, that this new direction isn't going to interfere with your availability for family obligations. I can't this Sunday, Papa. I'm meeting with a potential client. But maybe the following weekend? A client meeting on Sunday? It's the only time that worked with their schedule. They're launching a solar installation business and need help with their marketing strategy. Emma could hear her father processing this information, trying to reconcile his image of his accommodating daughter with someone who would prioritize business meetings over family dinners. Well, he said finally, I guess that's good. That you're pursuing things. The conversation ended with promises to talk soon and Emma's assurance that she would call her mother directly. After hanging up, Emma opened her notebook to a section she had started titled Family Reactions and Responses. Under Miguel's name, she wrote, confused but trying to be supportive, worried about risk, surprised by my certainty. The exercise had become part of her new self-awareness practice, documenting how her family responded to her changes, not to judge them, but to understand the dynamics she was learning to navigate differently. Her phone buzzed with a text from Isabella. Saw your LinkedIn post about the consulting business idea. So proud of you. Want to grab lunch this week and hear all about it? Emma smiled, feeling a warmth that had nothing to do with family obligation and everything to do with genuine connection. Isabella had been the easiest family member to maintain a relationship with during these weeks of change, perhaps because she was going through her own artistic awakening and understood the courage required to pursue authentic self-expression. She texted back, Wednesday lunch, I want to hear about your gallery submission too. That evening, Emma worked on her business plan until nearly midnight, refining her service offerings and researching potential competitors. The work felt different from anything she had done before, not just professionally satisfying, but personally, meaningful in a way that made the late nights feel energizing rather than exhausting. Around 11:30, her phone rang. Claire's name appeared on the screen, and Emma felt a familiar spike of anxiety. Claire never called this late unless something was wrong, or unless she was frustrated about something and had been building up to a confrontation all day. Emma almost declined the call, then decided she was curious about what her sister wanted to say. Claire, is everything okay? I'm fine. We need to talk. Claire's voice had that crisp quality it took on when she was managing her emotions carefully. Mom is worried about you, and honestly, so am I. Emma settled back in her chair, recognizing that this was the conversation she had been expecting since Christmas. What are you worried about? You've been different since Christmas. Distant. You barely responded to my texts about New Year's. You missed family dinner. And now Mom tells me you're talking about starting some kind of business that could jeopardize your financial security. It's a consulting business, Claire. I'm not joining a commune. Don't be flippant. This isn't like you. You've always been the responsible one, the one who thinks things through and considers how your decisions affect other people. Emma felt the familiar tug of family dynamics, the subtle pressure to return to her designated role. But she also felt something new, a clarity about what was happening, and a choice about how to respond. You're right, she said calmly. I have always considered how my decisions affect other people, sometimes to the point where I couldn't make any decisions at all because I was too worried about disappointing someone. That's not what I meant. I know what you meant, Claire. You meant that I'm not behaving the way you expect me to behave, and that's making you uncomfortable. But my considering other people's feelings doesn't have to mean sacrificing my own ambitions. Claire was quiet for a moment. I just don't understand why you're changing everything all at once. You seemed happy before. I seemed accommodating. Before. There's a difference. Emma, we're family. We're supposed to accommodate each other. That's how families work. Are we, though? Emma asked, the question emerging from weeks of observation and reflection. Because it feels like I've been doing most of the accommodating, and everyone else has been doing most of the receiving. That's not fair. Isn't it? Emma's voice remained calm, but she could feel her heart racing. Claire, when was the last time you adjusted your plans to accommodate my schedule? When was the last time you asked what I needed instead of assuming I would figure out what you needed? Another silence. Emma could picture her sister processing this challenge to the family system that had worked so well for everyone except Emma. I don't know why you're being so hostile about this, Claire said finally. I'm not being hostile. I'm being honest. For the first time in years, I'm saying what I actually think instead of what I think will make everyone else comfortable. And you think that's better? Emma considered the question seriously. I think it's more real. And I think real relationships can handle honesty better than fake ones can handle constant accommodation. The conversation continued for another 20 minutes, with Claire alternating between concern, confusion, and frustration. Emma found herself responding with a patience that surprised her. Not the accommodating patience she had always shown, but the steady patience of someone who was no longer afraid of other people's emotions. When they finally hung up, Emma felt drained but also strangely exhilarated. She had navigated her first major family confrontation without backing down, without apologizing for her choices, and without taking responsibility for Claire's discomfort with those choices. She opened her notebook and wrote, Claire conversation. Managed to stay centered and honest without being defensive. She's scared I'm changing in ways that will affect her comfort, but that's her feeling to manage, not mine to fix. The realization felt revolutionary. Other people's emotions about her choices were not her responsibility to manage. She could love her family without sacrificing her authenticity to maintain their comfort. Emma looked around her apartment, the same space she had occupied for 3 years, but which now felt like the launching pad for a completely different life. On her coffee table, her business plan sat beside the notebook where she documented her growing self-awareness. Her laptop was open to an email from a potential client who had found her through LinkedIn and wanted to discuss a marketing strategy for their eco-friendly packaging company. These were the tangible results of 3 weeks of choosing herself, not instead of her family but alongside them. Not through rejection of connection, but through insistence on authentic connection. Emma poured herself a glass of the same wine she had opened on Christmas night and settled back into her chair. Outside, Chicago winter continued its relentless hold on the city. But inside her apartment, Emma felt the unmistakable warmth of a life finally aligned with its owner's actual desires. She opened her notebook to a fresh page and wrote, Things I know about myself now. I am capable of building something meaningful. I can love people without managing their emotions. My ambitions deserve the same respect I give to others' dreams. I am more interesting when I'm being authentic than when I'm being accommodating. Change is scary and necessary and worth it. I have been enough all along. I just needed to start believing it. The last item made her pause. She had spent so many years trying to earn her place through service that she had missed the fundamental truth. She had always deserved love and respect simply by existing, not through any performance of usefulness. Emma closed the notebook and looked out her window at the snow that still covered everything in pristine white. In a few months, spring would come and reveal what had been growing underneath all along. But for now, she was content to sit in the beautiful pause between her old life and whatever was coming next, knowing that the most important gift she had ever given herself was the permission to find out who she really was when she stopped trying to be what everyone else needed. The transformation was far from complete, but it had finally, undeniably, begun. By March, Emma's apartment had transformed into the unofficial headquarters of Rodriguez Environmental Marketing Consulting. Her dining table had disappeared under client files, market research, and legal documents for her LLC formation. The space felt alive with purpose in a way that her previous careful arrangements never had. Messy with productivity, rather than pristine with waiting. She was reviewing a proposal for a renewable energy startup when her phone rang. Sophia's name on the screen still caused a small flutter of anxiety, though Emma had learned to recognize the feeling without automatically capitulating to it. Hi, Mama. Mija, I have some news. Sophia's voice carried an excitement that Emma hadn't heard in months. You know Mrs. Chen from the school? Her daughter Amy just graduated from business school, and she's looking for marketing help for her sustainable fashion company. I told her about your new business, and she wants to meet with you. Emma paused, processing not just the referral but the fact that her mother had been talking about her business to other people. You told Mrs. Chen about my consulting work? Of course I did. I'm proud of you, Emma. I may not understand everything you're doing, but I can see how happy it makes you. Sophia's voice softened. I should have said that sooner. I was worried about you taking risks, but I forgot that you've always been smart about these things. The acknowledgement hit Emma more deeply than she had expected. For weeks, she had been operating under the assumption that her family saw her new direction as a concerning departure from responsibility, rather than a natural evolution of her capabilities. Thank you, Mama. That means a lot. And yes, I'd love to meet with Amy Chen. They spent the next 15 minutes discussing logistics, but for the first time in months, the conversation felt collaborative rather than worried. Sophia asked intelligent questions about Emma's client acquisition strategy and shared observations about small business owners in their community who might benefit from environmental marketing expertise. After they hung up, Emma made a note in her notebook under Family Progress. Mama beginning to see my business as something to be proud of rather than worried about. Actively helping with networking. The shift felt significant not just for what it meant about her relationship with her mother, but for what it suggested about the possibility of maintaining family connections while pursuing authentic self-expression. Her laptop chimed with an email from David, Claire's husband. The subject line read, "Business question. Hope you don't mind me asking." Emma opened it with curiosity tinged by wariness. David had been friendly but distant since Christmas, clearly uncertain how to navigate her transformation. Emma, I hope this isn't overstepping, but I've been following your LinkedIn posts about the environmental marketing work, and I'm impressed by what you're building. My company is looking at launching a carbon offset program, and we need someone who understands both the technical side and how to communicate it to consumers. Would you be interested in having a conversation about a potential consulting arrangement? I understand if mixing family and business feels complicated, but your expertise seems like exactly what we need. Emma read the email twice, recognizing the careful balance David was trying to strike between professional interest and family dynamics. She also recognized something else: respect for her expertise that hadn't been present in previous interactions. She crafted a response that was equally careful, professional, but warm, acknowledging the family dimension while treating the business inquiry with the seriousness it deserved. David, thank you for thinking of me for this project. I'd be very interested in learning more about your carbon offset program and how I might be able to help. Why don't we schedule a brief call to discuss the scope and see if it's a good fit? I appreciate you reaching out. Emma. The exchange felt like evidence of something she had been hoping for but hadn't quite believed possible. That her family relationships could evolve to include recognition of her professional capabilities, that she didn't have to choose between authenticity and connection. Her phone buzzed with a text from Isabella. Emergency coffee date? Something amazing happened with the gallery. Emma smiled, recognizing her sister's dramatic flair. She was meeting with a potential client in an hour, but Isabella's excitement was infectious, and Emma had learned to make space for spontaneous joy in ways she never had before. Can you meet me at Brewster's in 20 minutes? I have a client call at 3, but I want to hear your news. 20 minutes later, Emma found Isabella, practically vibrating with excitement at their usual corner table. Her laptop opened to what appeared to be an email. They want 3 pieces for the spring exhibition, Isabella announced without preamble. 3, and they're offering to purchase one for their permanent collection. Emma felt a rush of genuine happiness for her sister, unmarred by the old impulse to deflect attention back to Isabella's needs or to minimize her own work in comparison. Isabella, that's incredible. Which pieces? They spent the next 30 minutes discussing Isabella's artistic choices, the politics of gallery representation, and the surreal experience of having her work valued by strangers. But Emma noticed something different in the conversation. Isabella was asking for her opinions, treating her as someone whose perspective on business and strategy might be valuable. You know, Isabella said, stirring her latte thoughtfully, watching you start your business has made me braver about advocating for my own work. I actually negotiated with the gallery instead of just accepting their first offer. How did that go? Better than I expected. They agreed to better positioning for my pieces and a higher commission percentage. Isabella grinned. I kept thinking about what you said about knowing your own worth. And I realized that applies to art pricing too. Emma felt a complicated mixture of pride and surprise. She had been so focused on managing her own transformation that she hadn't fully considered how her changes might influence her family members' relationships with their own ambitions. I'm proud of you for advocating for yourself, Emma said. It's not easy to ask for what you're worth. No, but it's getting easier with practice. Kind of like how you're getting better at saying no to things that don't serve you. The observation was astute, and Emma wondered when Isabella had become so perceptive about family dynamics. Perhaps she had always been observant but hadn't felt permission to voice her insights until Emma's transformation had created space for more honest conversations. Emma's client call that afternoon went better than expected. The renewable energy startup was run by two women in their 30s who had left corporate jobs to launch their solar installation business. They spoke Emma's language. Passionate about environmental impact, but pragmatic about the need for sustainable business practices. We love that you understand both sides, one of them explained. We've talked to marketing consultants who get the business strategy, but think our environmental mission is just feel-good branding. And we've talked to environmental advocates who understand our passion, but don't seem to grasp that we need to make money to stay in business. Emma found herself in the flow state that had become familiar over the past months. Professionally engaged, intellectually challenged, and personally aligned with the work. When they offered her a 3-month retainer to develop their launch strategy, she accepted without the usual internal debate about whether she was qualified or charging enough. That evening, Emma called Jessica to share the news about landing her third client. 3 clients in 2 months, Jessica said. You're officially no longer an aspiring entrepreneur. You're an entrepreneur. The distinction felt significant. Emma looked around her apartment, her functional workspace, her growing client files, her notebook full of insights about business development and personal growth, and realized that, somewhere in the past few months, she had stopped preparing to become someone different, and had actually become her. I think you're right, she said. I think I actually did it. How does it feel? Emma considered the question seriously. Scary and exciting, and like I should have done it years ago, but also like it took exactly as long as it needed to take. They talked for another hour, about Emma's business development plans, Jessica's own career transitions, and the strange alchemy of friendship that deepens when both people are growing in their own directions, rather than staying static for the comfort of familiarity. After hanging up, Emma opened her notebook to document the day's developments, but found herself writing something different than her usual analytical observations. Today felt like the first day I didn't think of myself as someone pretending to be a business owner. The clients talked to me like I was the expert they needed, not like they were doing me a favor by considering my services. I quoted my rates without apologizing or offering discounts. I scheduled our next call for a time that worked for my calendar rather than automatically accommodating their preferences. Isabella said I've made her braver, which surprised me. I've been so focused on my own changes that I didn't realize they might be affecting other people in positive ways. Maybe authenticity is contagious in the same way that people-pleasing used to be contagious in our family. David reaching out feels like a sign that it's possible to have professional relationships with family members without losing the boundary between who I am at work and who I am at family gatherings. I can be competent and loving, successful, and connected. Emma paused in her writing, struck by a realization that felt both obvious and profound. She had been thinking about her transformation as a choice between her family and herself, between accommodation and authenticity. But the past few months had shown her that the real choice was between relationships based on roles and relationships based on recognition of herself and others as complete people with complex needs and capabilities. Her phone rang, interrupting her reflection. Claire's name appeared on the screen, and Emma felt the familiar tightness in her chest, though it was less intense than it had been in January. Hi, Claire. Hi. Do you have a few minutes to talk? Claire's voice lacked the crisp management tone that had characterized their previous conversations about Emma's changes. She sounded uncertain, maybe even vulnerable. Sure. What's going on? I wanted to apologize for how I reacted to your business plans. I've been thinking about our conversation in January, and I realize I was being defensive about changes that weren't really about me. Emma sat up straighter, surprised by the admission. What do you mean? I think. Claire paused, and Emma could hear her choosing words carefully. I think I was scared that if you stopped being the person who took care of everyone else's needs, I might have to look at whether I was taking care of anyone's needs, including my own. The honesty was unexpected and touching. Emma felt the impulse to reassure Claire, to minimize her own needs to make space for her sister's vulnerability. But she also felt something else. Curiosity about where this conversation might go if she didn't immediately move into caretaking mode. What made you think about it differently? Emma asked. David mentioned that he's been impressed by your LinkedIn posts and your business development. And then I realized I've been so focused on how your changes affect me that I never actually asked how they're affecting you. Claire took a breath. So I'm asking now. How are you doing with all of this? Really? Emma felt a rush of gratitude for the question, not just because Claire was asking, but because she had a genuine answer to give. I'm doing really well, actually. Better than I've been in years. The work is challenging and meaningful, and I'm building something that feels authentically mine for the first time in my adult life. And the family stuff? I know I made it harder by being critical instead of supportive. Emma considered her response carefully. The family stuff has been complicated, but not in the way I expected. I thought I would have to choose between my own growth and maintaining relationships with all of you. But it's been more about learning to have different kinds of relationships, more honest ones, where I don't have to perform accommodation to earn love. Do you feel like you're getting that? More honest relationships? With some people, yeah. Isabella has been amazing. Mama is starting to understand what I'm doing and even help with networking. And you asking these questions right now feels like progress. Claire was quiet for a moment. I want to be better at this. At being your sister instead of just someone who expects you to manage things for the family. I'd like that too, Emma said, meaning it. But Claire, you don't have to become a different person just because I'm changing. You just have to be willing to see me as a different person, or maybe the same person, but more fully expressed. They talked for another 20 minutes, the conversation feeling more genuine than any they had shared in years. Claire asked specific questions about Emma's business, showed interest in her client work, and even shared some of her own professional frustrations with managing her volunteer commitments. When they hung up, Emma felt the satisfaction that comes from being seen and appreciated for who you actually are, rather than what you provide for others. She returned to her notebook and wrote, Claire conversation. Major breakthrough. She apologized and asked genuine questions about my experience. We talked about business, about relationships, about growth. For the first time in years, I felt like we were having a conversation between equals, rather than between a caretaker and someone being taken care of. Emma closed the notebook and looked around her transformed apartment. In 3 months, she had built a business, deepened some relationships, complicated others, and learned to distinguish between her own desires and her ingrained habits of accommodation. But perhaps most importantly, she had learned that the gift she had been searching for all her life, the recognition, appreciation, and love she had tried to earn through perfect gift-giving and endless service, had been available to her all along. She had just needed to learn to give it to herself first. Outside her window, the Chicago winter was finally beginning to loosen its grip. Emma could see patches of grass emerging from the melting snow, and the light stayed a little longer each evening. Spring was coming, with all its promise of growth that had been waiting beneath the surface all along. Emma smiled and opened her laptop to work on a proposal for a new client. Work that felt like play, purpose that felt like joy, a life that finally felt authentically her own. June arrived with the kind of Chicago summer that made everyone forget the brutality of winter, and Emma found herself working from a coffee shop patio, her laptop balanced among client files and a half-eaten salad she'd ordered more out of obligation than hunger. The renewable energy startup had exceeded their first quarter goals. Amy Chen's sustainable fashion line was generating buzz in local media, and David's carbon offset program had launched to positive internal reception at his company. Emma was deep in concentration, crafting a social media strategy for a urban farming collective, when a shadow fell across her table. She looked up to find a woman about her age, professionally dressed but with paint under her fingernails, the kind of detail Emma had learned to notice since Isabella had taught her to see the marks that passion leaves on people. "Excuse me, are you Emma Rodriguez?" the woman asked. "I'm sorry to interrupt, but I'm Katie Morrison. Amy Chen gave me your name." Emma closed her laptop and extended her hand. "Katie, nice to meet you. Amy mentioned you might be in touch about your community art project." Katie slid into the opposite chair with the grateful relief of someone who had been walking around looking for courage to approach a stranger. "I hope this isn't too forward, but when Amy described what you did for her launch strategy, I knew I had to meet you. My project is different from her fashion line, but the environmental focus is similar." Over the next hour, Katie explained her vision, converting abandoned lots in underserved neighborhoods into community art gardens, spaces where local artists could create murals and sculptures while residents grew food and children had safe places to play. The environmental benefits were clear: urban green space, local food production, air quality improvement. But Katie was struggling to communicate the project's value to potential funders who wanted measurable impacts and scalable models. "I can paint and I can organize communities," Katie said, frustration evident in her voice. "But I can't make spreadsheets that convince foundation boards that beauty and belonging are worth investing in." Emma felt the familiar spark that had become her compass for taking on new clients, the combination of professional challenge and personal alignment that made work feel meaningful rather than transactional. "What if we approached it differently?" Emma suggested. "What if instead of trying to separate the environmental benefits from the community benefits, we positioned them as inseparable? Urban food deserts and lack of green space are environmental justice issues. Community art and neighborhood cohesion are environmental resilience strategies." Katie's eyes lit up with recognition. "You get it. You actually get what I'm trying to do." They spent another hour sketching out a communication strategy that would present Katie's project as a comprehensive approach to environmental and social sustainability. Emma found herself energized by the complexity of the challenge and the opportunity to help someone translate their passion into language that could secure resources. "I have to ask," Katie said as they prepared to leave. "How did you learn to think about environmental work this way? Most marketing people I've talked to treat the environmental angle like a nice bonus feature rather than the central organizing principle." Emma paused, considering how to explain the journey that had brought her to this moment. "I think I had to learn to take my own values seriously before I could help other people communicate theirs effectively. I spent a lot of years accommodating other people's priorities instead of developing my own." Katie nodded with understanding. "I know that feeling. It's taken me years to believe that what I care about is worth other people's investment." The conversation stayed with Emma as she walked home, laptop bag slung over her shoulder and Katie's business card tucked into her notebook. She was building something that extended beyond individual client relationships, a practice that attracted people who were trying to align their work with their values, who needed help translating passion into sustainable impact. Her phone rang as she unlocked her apartment door. Isabella's name appeared on the screen, but instead of her usual cheerful greeting, Isabella's voice carried an urgency that made Emma immediately alert. "Emma, are you home? Can I come over? Something happened with the gallery and I need to talk to someone who understands business stuff." 20 minutes later, Isabella sat on Emma's couch, her artistic confidence replaced by the vulnerability of someone navigating unfamiliar professional territory. The gallery that had purchased one of her pieces was now interested in representing her exclusively. But the contract they'd sent was dense with legal language and financial terms that Isabella didn't understand. "They want exclusive representation. For 2 years," Isabella explained, handing Emma a stack of papers. "They're offering a monthly stipend, but I have to give them first refusal on everything I create, and they take 60% of sales." Emma read through the contract with the careful attention she'd learned to apply to her own business agreements. The terms weren't necessarily unfair, but they were heavily weighted in the gallery's favor, with little protection for Isabella if the relationship didn't work out. "What does your gut tell you about this?" Emma asked. "That I should be grateful someone wants to represent me and not ask too many questions," Isabella replied immediately, then paused. "But watching you negotiate with your clients has made me realize that gratitude and good business sense don't have to be mutually exclusive." Emma smiled at her sister's growing sophistication. Right. Being grateful for an opportunity doesn't mean accepting whatever terms someone offers you. What would you want to change about this contract if you could? They spent the next 2 hours going through the agreement clause by clause, with Emma explaining the business implications and Isabella articulating her concerns about creative control and financial security. By the end, Isabella had a clear list of modifications she wanted to request: a shorter initial commitment period, a better commission split, and retention of rights to work created before the contract began. "I'm scared they'll withdraw the offer if I negotiate," Isabella admitted. "They might," Emma agreed. "But if they withdraw an offer because you asked for reasonable modifications to protect your interests, then they weren't offering you a partnership. They were offering you a transaction that benefited them more than you." Isabella was quiet, for a moment, processing this distinction. "When did you get so wise about this stuff?" "When I started believing that my interests mattered as much as other people's," Emma replied. "And when I realized that asking for what you need isn't selfish, it's how you build sustainable relationships." After Isabella left, Emma reflected on how natural it had felt to help her sister navigate a professional challenge without falling into her old pattern of taking over and managing the situation. She had offered her expertise while leaving Isabella responsible for her own decisions, supporting without rescuing. The distinction felt important, a sign of how her relationships were evolving in tandem with her sense of self. Her laptop chimed, with an email from David, the subject line reading, "Quarterly Review Results." Emma opened it with curiosity, expecting an update on the carbon offset program's performance. Emma wanted to share some exciting news. "The carbon offset program exceeded our Q2 projections by 40%, and the communication strategy you developed has been getting attention from our industry partners. My CEO asked who developed the marketing approach because she's considering similar programs for other divisions. Would you be interested in a conversation about expanded consulting work? Also, Claire wanted me to ask if you're free for dinner next weekend. She has something she wants to discuss with you." Emma read the email twice, absorbing both the professional recognition and the personal invitation. 6 months ago, David's praise would have felt like validation she desperately needed. Now it felt like confirmation of work well done. Satisfying, but not essential to her sense of worth. She replied professionally, agreeing to discuss expanded consulting work, and accepting the dinner invitation with genuine curiosity about what Claire wanted to discuss. That evening, Emma worked on Katie Morrison's funding proposal, translating the community art garden project into language that would resonate with environmental foundations. The work felt like a puzzle she was uniquely positioned to solve, combining her marketing expertise with her growing understanding of how to communicate values-based initiatives to institutional funders. As she wrote, Emma found herself thinking about the conversation she'd had with Katie about taking your own values seriously. Her entire client base had emerged from her decision to align her professional work with her environmental concerns, a choice that had initially felt risky but had proven to be the foundation of her business success. The irony wasn't lost on her. By finally choosing to pursue what she wanted rather than what others expected, she had created work that was more valuable to others than anything she had done while trying to accommodate everyone else's needs. Saturday evening found Emma in Claire and David's dining room, the same space where she had experienced her Christmas awakening 6 months earlier. But the dynamics felt fundamentally different. She was seated at the table as a guest rather than automatically taking charge of service. Claire had prepared dinner herself rather than expecting Emma to manage the logistics, and the conversation included genuine questions about Emma's business, rather than polite inquiries that quickly shifted to other topics. "I have a proposition," Claire said as they finished dessert. "David told you about the CEO's interest in your communications approach, but there's more to it than just expanded consulting work." Emma waited, curious about where this was leading. She's looking for a director of sustainability communications, someone who can develop comprehensive strategies for environmental initiatives across multiple business units. It would be a senior role, significant salary increase, equity participation, and the resources to build a team. Emma felt a flutter of surprise. "She's offering me a job?" "She's interested in having a conversation," David clarified, "based on the work you've done for us and your reputation in the environmental marketing space." But Claire had a different idea. Claire leaned forward, her expression more animated than Emma had seen it in months. "What if instead of you taking a corporate job, we helped you scale your consulting business? David's company could be an anchor client, I could help with operations and business development, and you could maintain the independence you've built while having the security of steady revenue. Emma stared at her sister, trying to process this unexpected development. You want to work with me? I want to work with someone who's building something meaningful, Claire replied. I've been volunteering for environmental nonprofits for years, but it's always felt disconnected from any real expertise I have. This would let me contribute to environmental work while using my business skills in a way that actually matters. The conversation continued for 2 hours, with Claire and David outlining their vision for how Emma's business could expand while maintaining its values-driven focus. They had clearly put significant thought into the proposal, researching business, development strategies, and identifying potential partnership opportunities. Emma found herself genuinely considering the offer, not from desperation or people-pleasing, but from recognition that it could accelerate her impact while providing the kind of collaboration she had been craving. I need some time to think about this, Emma said finally. It's not that I'm not interested, but I want to make sure I'm making the decision for the right reasons. Of course, Claire replied. Take all the time you need. I just wanted you to know that I see what you've built, I respect it, and I'd like to be part of it if there's a way that makes sense for everyone. Driving home, Emma reflected on how dramatically her family relationships had evolved. Claire was no longer the sister who expected Emma to accommodate her needs, but someone who wanted to contribute to Emma's vision. David wasn't just the brother-in-law, who made polite conversation about her work, but someone who actively promoted her expertise in professional settings. The changes hadn't happened because Emma had demanded them, but because her own transformation had created space for others to show up differently in relationship to her. Sunday morning, Emma called Jessica to discuss Claire's proposition. They met for brunch at their usual spot, with Emma laying out the opportunity and her conflicted feelings about potentially partnering with family members. What's the conflict exactly? Jessica asked. It sounds like a great opportunity with people who understand and respect your work. It is, Emma agreed. I think I'm just scared of falling back into old patterns. What if working with Claire means I start accommodating her priorities instead of maintaining my own vision? Jessica considered this thoughtfully. That's a fair concern, but it sounds like Claire is proposing to support your vision rather than redirect it. And you're not the same person who would automatically defer to others' preferences anymore. Emma nodded, recognizing the truth in Jessica's observation. The Emma who had started her business 6 months ago might have been vulnerable to losing herself in collaborative relationships. But the Emma who had spent months practicing boundaries and advocating for her own interests was equipped to maintain her autonomy even within partnership structures. What does your gut tell you? Jessica pressed. Emma closed her eyes and tried to connect with her intuitive response to Claire's proposal. What came up was excitement rather than anxiety, the energy of someone who saw possibilities for expansion rather than threats to independence. I think I want to try it, Emma said, surprising herself with the certainty in her voice. Not because I need Claire's help, but because I think we could build something together that would be bigger than what either of us could create separately. Monday morning, Emma called Claire to schedule a follow-up conversation. They spent the week developing a more detailed partnership proposal, with clearly defined roles, decision-making processes, and financial arrangements. Emma found herself enjoying the collaboration, appreciating Claire's business acumen while maintaining clarity about her own vision and values. By Friday, they had the outline of a partnership that felt both ambitious and sustainable. Rodriguez Environmental Strategies, with Emma as founder and creative director, Claire as operations partner, and David's company as their first major client. That evening, Emma sat in her apartment surrounded by the evidence of her transformed life. Client files, partnership agreements, her notebook documenting months of personal and professional growth. She opened to a fresh page and began writing. 6 months ago, I thought the perfect gift was something you gave to someone else to make them happy. I spent years trying to anticipate and fulfill other people's needs, believing that if I could just give the right thing at the right time, I would earn the love and recognition I was craving. Now I understand that the most perfect gift is the one you give yourself. Permission to want things, to pursue them, to believe that your desires and ambitions are worthy of investment and effort. But here's what I didn't expect. When you give yourself that gift, you create space for other people to give themselves permission too. Isabella became braver about advocating for her art. Claire found a way to contribute to environmental work that mattered to her. Even Mama started seeing my business as something to be proud of, rather than worried about. The transformation I thought was about me becoming different turned out to be about all of us becoming more ourselves. The family dynamics didn't break. When I stopped being the accommodating one, they evolved into something more honest and sustainable. I'm building a business that aligns with my values, partnerships that respect my autonomy, and relationships that celebrate rather than constrain my growth. The life I'm creating feels like the most authentic gift I've ever given anyone, especially myself. Emma closed the notebook and looked out her window at the summer evening light. In a few months it would be Christmas again. The anniversary of her awakening to the difference between accommodation and love, between service and partnership, between earning worth and claiming it. She was already looking forward to giving gifts that reflected who she had become. Thoughtful but not desperate, generous but not self-sacrificing, loving but not accommodating. Gifts that celebrated the people she cared about without diminishing the person she had learned to become. The most perfect gift she had discovered was not something you gave or received, but something you became. A person capable of authentic love, sustainable generosity, and the courage to build a life that reflected your deepest values. Outside, Chicago summer stretched ahead with all its promise of growth and possibility. Emma smiled and returned to her work, grateful for the gift of becoming herself. December arrived with the same bite of winter cold that had accompanied Emma's awakening 11 months earlier, but this year she approached the holiday season with an entirely different energy. Rodriguez Environmental Strategies had officially launched in September, with Claire proving to be an unexpectedly capable operations partner who handled logistics and client relations while Emma focused on strategy and creative development. Their client roster had grown to include 12 businesses, from Amy Chen's fashion line to a sustainable architecture firm that was designing carbon-neutral housing developments. Emma stood in her new office, a shared workspace in Lincoln Park, that she and Claire had chosen together, reviewing the holiday gifts she had selected for her family. This year, the process had felt fundamentally different. Instead of weeks of anxious observation and careful calculation, she had chosen each gift with the relaxed attention of someone who knew that the gesture itself, rather than its perfection, was what mattered. For Isabella, she had commissioned a custom easel from a local woodworker who specialized in sustainable materials. It was beautiful and functional, but more importantly, it represented recognition of Isabella's commitment to her art without any attempt to anticipate or direct her creative choices. Miguel's gift was a consultation with a business development specialist who worked specifically with small contractors looking to incorporate sustainable building practices. Emma had learned through casual conversation that her father was interested in green building techniques, but didn't know how to market these services to potential clients. The gift offered him resources without assuming he needed her to solve his problems. For Sophia, Emma had arranged a weekend at a small arts retreat center where her mother could take pottery classes, something Sophia had mentioned wanting to try since her retirement from teaching. It was a gift that acknowledged her mother's emerging interests rather than her role as family caretaker. Claire's gift had been the most challenging to choose, not because their relationship remained difficult, but because it had evolved into something more complex and egalitarian. Emma had ultimately selected a beautiful leather portfolio embossed with Rodriguez Environmental Strategies and Claire's new title as Director of Operations. It was simultaneously personal and professional, acknowledging both their family connection and their business partnership. "Ready for the annual Rodriguez Christmas Marathon?" Claire asked, appearing in the office doorway with 2 cups of coffee and a grin that held none of the brittle management energy Emma remembered from previous holidays. "As ready as anyone can be for organized chaos," Emma replied, accepting the coffee gratefully. Isabella texted that she's bringing someone to meet everyone, which should add an interesting dynamic. Someone romantic or someone professional? Both, apparently. A gallery owner from Milwaukee who's interested in representing her work and who she's been dating for 2 months. Claire raised her eyebrows. "Isabella's really coming into her own, isn't she? I can barely keep up with all the ways everyone in this family is changing." The observation was delivered with genuine admiration, rather than the concern that had characterized Claire's previous responses to family members' growth. Emma had watched her sister develop her own confidence over the past year, finding satisfaction in work that aligned with her values and discovering capabilities she hadn't known she possessed. Speaking of which, Claire continued, David wanted me to ask if you'd be willing to do a presentation for his CEO's quarterly board meeting in January. She wants to showcase the environmental initiatives that came out of your consulting work. Emma nodded, feeling the quiet satisfaction that had replaced her previous desperate need for professional recognition. Sure, it'll be good exposure for the business. They spent the next hour reviewing year-end client reports and planning for January project launches. The collaboration had settled into a rhythm that felt both productive and sustainable, with each of them contributing distinct strengths without encroaching on the other's areas of expertise. Christmas Eve dinner was held at Sophia and Miguel's house, the same location where Emma had spent countless holidays managing logistics and facilitating conversations. But this year, she arrived as a guest rather than an unofficial coordinator, carrying only her gifts and a bottle of wine she had chosen, because she liked it, rather than because she thought it would impress anyone. The house buzzed with unfamiliar energy. Isabella's boyfriend Marcus turned out to be a thoughtful conversationalist who asked intelligent questions about everyone's work and seemed genuinely interested in the answers. Sophia had invited Mrs. Chen and her daughter Amy, creating an intergenerational gathering that felt more like a community celebration than a nuclear family obligation. Emma found herself in the unusual position of being able to participate in conversations rather than orchestrating them. When Miguel described his latest construction project, she listened with genuine interest rather than scanning the room for empty glasses and forgotten dishes. When Amy Chen talked about her fashion line's expansion into retail partnerships, Emma offered relevant insights without feeling responsible for managing the entire discussion. Emma, Mrs. Chen said during a lull in conversation, Amy tells me you've been instrumental in helping her business grow. It's wonderful to see young people supporting each other's success. The comment was simple, but it landed with particular resonance for Emma. A year ago, she would have deflected such praise or redirected attention to Amy's accomplishments. Now she accepted the acknowledgement with gracious confidence. Amy's doing beautiful work, Emma replied. I'm just helping her communicate that to the right audiences. After dinner, the family gathered in the living room for gift exchange, but the ritual felt transformed by everyone's evolved dynamics. Isabella opened her easel gift with tears of appreciation, immediately recognizing the thought Emma had put into choosing something that supported her artistic practice without directing it. Miguel's reaction to the business consultation was equally touching, genuine gratitude mixed with surprise that someone had been paying attention to his professional aspirations beyond his role as family patriarch. Sophia's pottery retreat weekend prompted a discussion about creativity and aging. That would have been impossible in previous years, when everyone had been too focused on maintaining comfortable roles to explore deeper topics. When Emma opened Claire's gift, a beautifully bound book of environmental business case studies with a personal inscription acknowledging their partnership, she felt the satisfaction of being truly seen by someone who had learned to appreciate, rather than manage her ambitions. Your turn, Claire said, handing Emma a small package that clearly wasn't from anyone in the family. Emma examined the unfamiliar wrapping paper with curiosity. Who's this from? Open it and see. Inside was a business card holder made from reclaimed wood, with Emma Rodriguez, Environmental Communications Strategist, engraved in elegant lettering. But it was the note that made Emma's breath catch. Emma, I wanted you to have something that reflects who you've become, rather than who anyone expected you to be. Thank you for showing me that it's possible to build a life that aligns with your values. Emma looked up to find Jessica standing in the doorway, having been quietly let in by Sophia during the gift exchange. Jessica, what are you doing here? Your mom invited me, Jessica said with a grin. She thought it would be nice to have friends here to celebrate your business success. I hope that's okay. Emma felt a wave of emotion that had nothing to do with surprise and everything to do with recognition. Sophia had thought to include Jessica not as an afterthought or obligation, but as someone important to Emma's life who deserved to be part of significant celebrations. The evening continued with the easy flow of genuine connection, conversations that moved naturally between personal and professional topics, laughter that felt spontaneous rather than performative, moments of quiet satisfaction that came from being surrounded by people who saw and appreciated each other's authentic selves. As the gathering wound down, Emma found herself in the kitchen with Sophia, loading the dishwasher in companionable silence. "Mija," her mother said quietly, "I want you to know how proud I am of what you've built this year. Not just the business, but the person you've become." Emma paused, dish towel in hand, recognizing the weight of the moment. "Thank you, Mama. That means everything to me. I've been thinking about last Christmas, about how upset you seemed when you left Claire's house early. I was worried we had done something wrong, that we weren't supporting you the way we should have been." Emma considered her response carefully. "You weren't doing anything wrong, Mama. I was just learning to ask for what I needed, instead of only giving what I thought others wanted." Sophia nodded thoughtfully. "It's a hard lesson to learn. I think I'm still learning it myself." They finished cleaning in comfortable silence, the kitchen work feeling like shared responsibility, rather than Emma's automatic assumption of service. Driving home through the quiet Christmas Eve streets, Emma reflected on how different the evening had felt from previous family gatherings. Not dramatically different, the same people, the same house, many of the same traditions, but infused with the authenticity that had been missing for so many years. Her phone buzzed with a text from Isabella. "Thank you for the easel. And thank you for showing me that it's okay for gifts to be about supporting someone's dreams rather than managing their feelings. I love you." Emma smiled, recognizing in Isabella's words the understanding that had taken her months to develop. The perfect gift wasn't about anticipating someone's needs or solving their problems. It was about witnessing their authentic self and offering support for who they were becoming. Back in her apartment, Emma opened her notebook to document the evening, but found herself writing something different than her usual analytical observations. This Christmas felt like the first one where I was fully present as myself, not the family coordinator or the perfect gift giver or the person responsible for everyone else's happiness. Just Emma, with my own life and work and relationships, contributing to but not managing the family dynamic. The gifts I gave this year came from a place of genuine love rather than anxious performance. The gifts I received reflected recognition of who I actually am, rather than appreciation for what I provide for others. I think this is what I was searching for all those years. Not the perfect gift, but the perfect presence. The ability to show up authentically in relationship to people I love, offering support without sacrifice, maintaining connection without accommodation. Emma closed the notebook and looked around her apartment, now decorated with the evidence of a life fully lived, business awards, client thank you notes, photos with friends and family that captured genuine moments rather than orchestrated gatherings. Tomorrow would be Christmas Day, with its own gatherings and traditions. But for the first time in her adult life, Emma looked forward to the holiday, not as a performance to be managed, but as a celebration to be enjoyed. The most perfect gift, she had finally learned, was the gift of becoming yourself. Christmas morning dawned with the kind of crystalline brightness that made Chicago look like a postcard, and Emma woke without the familiar knot of anxiety that had preceded every holiday for as long as she could remember. Her phone showed messages from clients wishing her happy holidays, a reminder that she had built professional relationships based on mutual respect rather than desperate accommodation. She made coffee and settled into her reading chair with the newspaper, a luxury she had rarely allowed herself during previous Christmas mornings, when every moment had been scheduled around other people's needs and expectations. The simple act of reading felt revolutionary, a declaration that her own interests deserved space even on days devoted to family celebration. At 10:30, she drove to Claire and David's house for the traditional Christmas brunch, but this year she arrived as someone with her own full life rather than someone whose life existed primarily to enhance others' experiences. The difference was subtle but profound. She brought flowers because she wanted to, not because she felt obligated to contribute something to justify her presence. "Merry Christmas, business partner." Claire greeted her with a hug that felt genuinely warm rather than performatively festive. "I have something to show you before everyone else arrives." Claire led her to David's home office, where a professionally printed magazine lay open on the desk. "Chicago Business Weekly," Claire announced proudly. "Page 47. Emma stared at the two-page spread featuring Rodriguez Environmental Strategies as one of the city's emerging businesses to watch in the new year. The article included quotes from several of their clients, a photo of Emma and Claire in their office, and a detailed description of their approach to environmental communications. "When did this happen?" Emma asked, genuinely surprised. "I submitted our information months ago, but they just confirmed the feature last week. I wanted it to be a Christmas surprise." Claire's satisfaction was evident, but it was the satisfaction of someone celebrating a shared achievement, rather than taking credit for managing someone else's success. Emma read through the article, recognizing her own words in the quotes, but seeing them presented with the authority and credibility that came from external validation. The journalist had captured not just what their business did, but why it mattered. The intersection of environmental urgency and effective communication that had become Emma's professional signature. "This is incredible, Claire. Thank you for making this happen." "I didn't make it happen," Claire replied with a smile. "I just made sure the right people knew what you were already accomplishing." The distinction felt important, evidence of how their partnership had evolved into genuine collaboration rather than one person managing another's career development. The rest of the family began arriving shortly after 11, and Emma found herself observing the gathering with the detached appreciation of someone who was fully present, but not responsible for orchestrating the experience. Isabella arrived, with Marcus, both of them glowing with the satisfaction of people whose relationship was developing naturally, rather than being managed by external expectations. Miguel and Sophia brought Amy Chen and her mother, continuing the tradition they had established the previous evening of expanding family celebrations to include chosen community. The decision reflected Sophia's own growth towards seeing hospitality as sharing joy rather than performing duty. "Emma," Amy Chen approached with obvious excitement. "I wanted to thank you again for the introduction to Katie Morrison. Her community Art Garden project is exactly the kind of collaboration I've been wanting to explore for my next collection." Emma felt the quiet satisfaction that came from connections made thoughtfully rather than frantically. "I thought you two might have interesting things to talk about. How's the collaboration developing?" "We're planning a line of accessories made from recycled materials generated by her urban farming initiatives. It's exactly the kind of closed-loop sustainability I've been wanting to incorporate." Amy's enthusiasm was infectious, and Emma found herself genuinely excited about work that she had facilitated but didn't need to control. The gift exchange unfolded with the relaxed rhythm of people who were celebrating rather than performing. Emma watched her family members open the presents she had chosen, feeling pleasure in their genuine appreciation without the desperate need for validation that had characterized previous years. When Isabella opened the wooden easel, she immediately began discussing technical features with Marcus, who turned out to have carpentry skills and could appreciate the craftsmanship involved. The conversation felt natural and unforced, evidence of how authentic gifts created space for authentic connection. Miguel's reaction to the business development consultation was equally gratifying. Instead of the polite appreciation Emma might have expected, he showed genuine excitement about incorporating sustainable building practices into his contracting work. "This is exactly what I've been thinking about but didn't know how to pursue," he said, reading through the consultant's credentials. "Emma, how did you know this was something I wanted to explore?" "Because I've been listening to you talk about building techniques for years," Emma replied simply. "I just finally realized that paying attention to what people are passionate about is more useful than trying to guess what might make them happy." The comment prompted a moment of recognition around the room, family members exchanging glances that acknowledged how their dynamics had shifted over the past year. When Emma opened her own gifts, she was struck by how thoughtfully each person had chosen something that reflected their understanding of who she had become rather than who she had always been. Claire's business card holder was accompanied by a bottle of wine from a vineyard that used regenerative farming practices. Isabella had painted a small canvas depicting hands holding seeds, with a note explaining that it represented growth that comes from choosing to plant what you actually want to harvest. Sophia's gift was perhaps the most surprising. A leather-bound journal embossed with Rodriguez Environmental Strategies, Year 2 Planning, and filled with blank pages for Emma's continued reflection and goal-setting. "I noticed how much writing in that notebook has helped you this year," Sophia explained. I thought you might want something specifically for planning the future, instead of just processing the past. Emma felt a rush of gratitude for her mother's perceptive attention. The recognition that Sophia had been observing and appreciating her growth, rather than just worrying about her changes. As the afternoon progressed, Emma found herself in conversations that would have been impossible the previous year. Substantive discussions about work and ambitions and creative projects, with family members who were interested in her perspective, rather than just politely acknowledging her contributions before moving on to more interesting topics. When Marcus asked detailed questions about environmental marketing strategies, Emma found herself explaining her approach with the confidence of someone whose expertise was being genuinely sought, rather than tolerated. When Amy Chen described the challenges of scaling a sustainable fashion business, Emma offered insights drawn from her work with other environmental entrepreneurs, contributing to a conversation between equals rather than trying to solve problems she hadn't been asked to solve. As the gathering wound down, Emma realized that she had spent the entire day being herself, professionally competent, personally authentic, genuinely present, without once falling into the role of family facilitator or emotional manager. Driving home through the quiet Christmas afternoon streets, Emma reflected on how complete her transformation felt. Not finished. Growth was an ongoing process, but integrated in a way that made her new life feel sustainable rather than effortful. Her phone buzzed with a text from Jessica. Saw the Chicago Business Weekly article online. So proud of what you've built. The Emma from last Christmas would be amazed by who you've become. Emma smiled, recognizing the truth in Jessica's observation, while also understanding that the Emma from last Christmas had always contained the potential for who she was now. The gift hadn't been becoming someone different, but rather becoming fully herself. Back in her apartment, Emma opened the new journal Sophia had given her and wrote on the first page. The most perfect gift is the one that creates space for growth rather than trying to direct it. This year, I gave my family the gift of my authentic presence, and they gave me the gift of seeing and celebrating who I've become. The transformation that began with learning to say no has evolved into the ability to say yes from a place of genuine choice rather than automatic accommodation. Year 2 begins tomorrow, with all its possibilities for continued growth, deeper relationships, and work that matters. I'm ready. Outside her window, Chicago settled into Christmas night, peaceful and promising. Emma closed the journal and looked around her apartment, her sanctuary, her launching pad, her home base for a life fully lived. The most perfect gift she knew now was the gift of becoming yourself. Everything else was just wrapping paper. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.